You're watching Byline Wilmington on CBS 10 WILM. Here's your host, Don Ansell.
Thanks for tuning back into Byline Wilmington. I'm Rhonda Bellamy, substituting for Don Ansell and continuing our discussion with Dr. Stephen Meinhold, a local political scientist who is going to talk a little more about the political landscape as we head into the 2012 elections. Now, your area of expertise is presidential elections.
Yes.
There has been much mention made of the fact that President Obama's swing through North Carolina on this jobs tour, aboard a bus, in fact, was meant to deflect from the Western presidential debates. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Obama has some challenges ahead of him as he rolls into the election next November. One of them is that the media and voters are not really paying attention to him, and you see some evidence of that in this swing on the bus tour. I guess the controversy that between him and McCain is that the bus was made in Canada. But here he is making a jobs tour, started it in North Carolina, rolling up, I believe finishing it in Virginia yesterday at a fire station, talking about the need to create jobs. But Republican voters are paying attention to the Republican candidates who were debating out in Las Vegas, and the rest of America's struggling under high level of unemployment. They're wondering what President Obama's doing, not what he's saying. And as we move into the new year, I really think that the president is going to have to be more direct in taking on Congress and confronting Congress if what he believes is that they're preventing his job measures from moving forward. And
let's look at North Carolina in terms of 2008 and 2012. Let's lay out for our viewers how Obama fared here in North Carolina and what you think will happen next year.
Well, 2008, Obama carried North Carolina, and that was a surprise to some. It was always considered by the Obama campaign to be a state that was going to be a swing state. It was a state that Democrats could win, but would be hard to win. Note that some changes are going on in the demographics of North Carolina, which make it most likely a permanent swing state. Large increase in Hispanic Latino voters, increasing urbanization in some of our urban areas, declining populations in the rural counties around the state. All of those increase in the technology sector and the creative class in the Research Triangle Park area up into Greensboro, over into Charlotte. The decline of the banking sector, which often has a high level of support for Republican candidates. All those things come together to put North Carolina in play. So Obama carried it in 2008. It's certainly possible that Obama can carry North Carolina in 2012. Probably more likely if he carries it, if Rick Perry is the nominee, since Rick Perry doesn't care too much for North Carolina barbecue. But if Mitt Romney is the nominee, which is likely, I believe he will be, North Carolina will be a competitive state next year in 2012.
What about Herman Cain? He's doing well. In fact, he is exceeding Mitt Romney's numbers in South Carolina. They're neck and neck in Florida. Any real chance?
Well, I think Herman Cain's exceeding everyone's expectations, right? And certainly right now Cain is playing into a very deep vein in the American political mind or American political socialization, as we like these non-professional politicians. We don't like politicians. We like the individual. And our American political culture goes all the way back to the framers of the Constitution, who weren't politicians. They were all largely farmers or businessmen of one kind or another. And so there's a certain appeal to that. But the reality is, in modern day politics, going back certainly to FDR and somewhat before that, both political parties have nominated, at the end of the day, candidates with substantial political resumes or who were from well-known political families. And even those that come from political families often have resumes. Folks often forget that George Bush was the governor of Texas, right? One of the biggest states in the country. So he didn't come to Washington just because of his last name.
Very interesting. Again, if you're just tuning in to Byline Wilmington, we're talking with political scientist Dr. Stephen Meinhold and getting a look at the political landscape as we head into next month's municipal elections and next year's presidential election. Let's go back to the presidential debate and the Republican presidential debate in Las Vegas. We're hearing some of the same issues: national security, the hiring of illegal immigrants to do yard work, that type of thing. Is that what Republican voters are looking for? Will they make decisions based on those types of issues?
Well, it's working in favor of Obama that the Republican primary right now doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. The party, it's not clear that the Republican Party is going to be about creating jobs. It's not clear whether the Republican Party is going to be about foreign policy. They have another debate coming up soon about foreign policy, but the candidates are kind of all over the board right now in the Republican primary about should we be in Afghanistan, should we be out of Afghanistan, should we be increasing spending on the war on terror, decreasing it, should we increase spending on the Defense Department, should we decrease it? And the reality is that any substantial cuts in the country's debt and the budget deficits have to involve military spending. Because of its discretionary nature. And it's really not clear where Republican voters are going to come down. The Tea Party movement is still out there. That will play significantly into the Republican primary. Ron Paul is still pushing an agenda which is get the government out of everything, and that has an appeal right now to Republican voters, to conservative voters. So I think we don't know yet. If Romney is the ultimate nominee, then we're likely to see a very mainstream Republican Party going back to probably a Reagan, what looks like sort of a Reagan agenda, which is an appreciation for a certain level of federal government, not overwhelming, probably hold the line on taxes, maybe reduce the taxes a little bit, take a look at health care in the country. But it's going to look like a fairly mainstream political agenda for the Republicans.
Speaking of taxes, we've seen Cain come out with his 999 plan. We've seen Perry with his flat tax plan. How is that going to play out?
Well, I think you asked about Herman Cain a few minutes ago, and I think the reality is Herman Cain doesn't have much of a chance at winning the Republican nomination. At this stage, he probably has a very good chance of being a vice presidential contender. He may, in fact, appear on the Republican ticket. He brings a certain set of skills that I think would be valuable. He's a successful business person. He's been on the Federal Reserve. He's well liked. He has a good personality for running for president. And I think that's very appealing to voters. But I think at the end of the day, the Republican Party tends to nominate particularly candidates who have run before and often run in several Republican primaries before they're actually nominated. I think the tax plans, really the reality is the tax system, everyone agrees is broken, but it's also very complicated. And so dismantling the current tax code is going to take the work of both the Congress and the President. And these simplistic plans like a 999 or simply moving to a flat tax are really not going to survive in Washington, D.C. Whatever ultimately happens with our tax code, it's going to have to be more sophisticated than a simplistic approach of 999 or a flat tax.
And we'll continue this discussion with Dr. Stephen Meinhold, a local political scientist, on Byline Wilmington, right after this.